So some of the characteristics of these phones is that, of course, being a regular desk phone, we've got a known build quality, great speech quality as well, but we're able to wireless link them up. Great for desktops or for wireless enabling of existing SIP phones, because you can attach a wireless Ethernet bridge to anything really. But perhaps the biggest advantage of these is that they're a known quantity. They look like a regular phone, and therefore you don't have to sort of train your staff to handle something that looks a little bit different. So they're very user friendly, great for use in the office, and excellent for temporary deployments. If you've just got to put out a few handsets for a short time, then you can avoid having to wire anything up by using these devices. There's a slight disadvantage in that you have to configure the wireless Ethernet bridge first, but that is a one-off piece of work and it doesn't take too long. And of course they're not truly wireless because you still have to power them into them. You still have to connect them up to the mains for their power. So here's perhaps something that we're all familiar with, the dual mode phone. This is a phone that can do the regular GSM or maybe CDMA connectivity, but it's also got Wi-Fi and SIP built in. So it's unlimited in terms of its mobility because we can go anywhere, because we've got both GSM or CDMA connectivity in addition to the Wi-Fi SIP stuff. And we find that the range we get on Wi-Fi is fine, and of course we all know that cellular technology gives us excellent coverage too. However, and this is one of my points about convergence, it's not really true convergence. It's a rather like having two telephones in one handset, in that we might be sharing a microphone and an earpiece, but these are two separate devices. They might also share an address book, but that's about it. What we can't do on these devices easily at the moment is do least cost routing, for example, because we have to make the choice by default whether we're going to go over SIP or over the GSM network. And if we don't want to use what we set to default, we need to go through quite a few different keystrokes to do that. I think there is room to put a least cost routing engine on the handset by an additional piece of software, and I believe people are starting to do that, but these are not widely deployed at the moment. Speech quality is of course excellent because these guys are in the business of making telephones, and so they've perfected their technology. We've got offerings from Nokia, HTC and other smartphones. Pirelli and UT Starcom also have these devices. So what are our characteristics? Well, typically they're better than Wi-Fi only phones because number one, they're designed by those with mobile phone experience, and number two, they are using very good quality components in the voice path. And as I said, there's no real integration between the kind of two telephony engines that are running inside those handsets. What are our advantages? Well, definitely better voice quality. The user interface is generally more intuitive because it's designed as a phone in the first place by people that have got years of phone experience. Excellent mobility, always on the net. You can always make a call, it's just your cost is going to vary. Are you going to pay to go over the GSM network or maybe hook up directly to your PBX via SIP and Wi-Fi? VoIP is somewhat of an application on these handsets, but they are made by respected vendors. So the disadvantages, of course, and if you have one of these handsets, you'll instantly smile in recognition of this. As soon as you turn Wi-Fi and SIP on, the battery life does go down quite considerably. Complex hotspot attachment process in some environments, which is what I was referring to back on one of the other slides, but this is not usually such a problem for these particular phones as they do have web browsers built in, and so you can hook up relatively straightforwardly. And the last point is it's sometimes rather frustrating when you go to choose the way you want to route a particular call. That can be an issue because as I've said, in the case of the Nokias, you make a choice and you say, do I want my calls to go by GSM as default or by SIP as default? And once you've made that choice, there's rather a few keystrokes that you have to do in order to route the call in an alternative way. So let's now look at SIP decked phones. And these are very clever devices that integrate SIP technology with the decked technology that's already been out there for several years for wireless phones. So great for mobile extensions on Asterisk or any other IP PBX, and the range is better than Wi-Fi, and we'll look at that in a moment. On a base station we can usually get around up to 6 handsets. The battery life is excellent, as is the speech quality, because as you know, decked phones have been out there for a long time, and so harnessing the decked air interface is a bit of a master stroke to integrate with SIP. There are offerings from Siemens, Snom and others, including Astra, I think. So the characteristics for these are they usually have, well, depending on whether it's a business offering or a consumer offering, they're going to have 1 or 2 connections. They usually have a LAN cable, of course, for the SIP, and if they're also analog devices, they'll have a cable to make the analog connection as well. They use the standard decked air interface, which is a proven technology and is, as we've already said, good at speech quality, good at battery life and so on. And to the average user, of course, they look just like a cordless phone, so there's nothing frightening in there. In fact, most people would probably not realise they're using a VoIP device. What are our advantages? Excellent range, great battery life and very good speech quality, which are a great combination. Intuitive use as well, and the SIP configuration is very straightforward because we're just hooking up a SIP device. The only disadvantage I could think of here is that the mobility only extends to the office. We can't show up at an airport or a cafe and hope to use our decked device. So let's compare those and see how they stack up against each other. And of course, the main things have got to be speech quality and battery life. And of course, we've got to think about the level of mobility we have and the range that we're going to get. And you'll see that the option that comes out best for those is actually that SIP decked option, the one that we looked at last, because it's excellent in speech quality, range, battery life, and what have you. However, it is only mobile within the office, and so if you need something to be out on the road with, it's not the one for you. Okay, so let's look at the summary for these wireless devices, and the overview is that there's lots of choice and there's something out there for every scenario. When we look at the Wi-Fi only SIP phones, they're okay, but there are some issues with battery life and range, and they were really brought to the market by people that didn't have a lot of telephone experience. They were more into network stuff. The SIP desk phones, of course, are a very good choice for fast office installs because they look like a standard SIP phone. Of course, they will cost a bit more, and we could be talking about something between $30 and $50 as an additional premium to add that wireless connectivity to the desk phone. Those dual mode phones, the 3G or GSM and Wi-Fi SIP phones, are better quality than just the standard Wi-Fi phones. You'll probably appreciate that they do cost a little more. However, when you look at them, they're not really integrated. They're just coincident phones inside the same handset. Not that that's altogether a bad thing, but I just wanted to point that out. And then the SIP decked phones that use the decked air interface for the cordless or wireless piece of the puzzle, and then have SIP in the base station, they're excellent in many different ways: speech quality, battery life, range. However, their mobility is limited to the office area. And although you can roam from one decked base station to another, that's fine on the decked side of things, but it can present an issue around the SIP side.